Meet the mainstream, and when mainstream media meets indie creators, the wonderful and terrible things that can happen. Our moderator is going to be Liz Shannon Miller. We also have on the panel Henry Reich, Ben Samick, Sarah Penna, and Dane Boedingheimer. So please welcome them all to the stage.
I sit in the chair without the microphone because I already have one. Oh, that's right, yes. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for sticking around. YouTube's after us, so that should be fun. You should definitely not leave. Stay right here. I'm joined by a wonderful team of people here who, from both sides of the independent and mainstream world. And just to start things off, get a lay of the land. Everyone, if you want to just remind the five folks out there what your name is, and then also say whether or not you feel like you come from the independent world or the mainstream world.
Hi, I'm Sarah Penna. I'm the co-founder and chief creative officer at Big Frame. Big Frame is a YouTube MCN and management company that was recently acquired by DreamWorks and Awesomeness TV. So that question is complicated. I would say as a company, I guess technically we're now kind of mainstream, being part of DreamWorks and the vision that Jeffrey Katzenberg has for the digital space. But our content creators as a whole, I would say, are largely independent.
I'm Dane Boedingheimer. I put faces on fruit. I'm the creator of The Annoying Orange, and I guess as for your question, main dependent? I was just trying to coin a new term.
I'm Henry Reich. I make Minute Physics, Minute Earth, and other stick figure videos, and I'm definitely not mainstream.
Hi, I'm Ben Samick, the Chief Operating Officer from Endemol. I'm about as traditional as it kind of goes up here. But us as Endemol, with building Endemol Beyond, we're trying to keep my foot in both sides. You know, we definitely as a company are.
You have seen a YouTube video or two.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. You're on the right page. So I feel like one thing we talk about a lot when it comes to mainstream versus independent content is just like what format it should take. Like, you know, how important is format when you're building something for YouTube versus when you're building something that has to fit into 22 minutes plus commercials on a network?
No, I think that's a really good question, because I think, you know, a lot of people say, you know, like Netflix and Hulu are these like great digital revolution, and, you know, it's not really. It's TV that's being viewed on a different platform maybe, or different devices, but isn't necessarily what we would consider like native digital. And I think we see not a lot of formats actually in native digital, with a few exceptions of like Annoying Orange and other, you know, YouTube content creators who actually have shows, but a lot of them are, you know, the format is the personality and it's all tied together. And I think that's where there's sort of this gap. And when we talk about jumping to the mainstream, it's like, how can you fit this round thing into a square thing?
I actually, do you mind, just to add on to that, I feel like, you know, format from Endemol, it's really what we came from, you know, Big Brother and Deal or No Deal and all these other big shows. That Shining Floor, and the format really is, it's telling the audience, you're gonna see front, middle, and end of the story, you know? And to me, format's really valuable to your audience, knows what they're gonna get. But I think that format's so broad now, because I think you're right, like Ultimate Orange, it's to me, like Epic Rap Battles. That's a format, you know? To me, the audience knows exactly what they're gonna get. They show up, you know, so to me, I feel like even Endemol, our pitch to how we can try to travel formats, to me a lot of these channels are things that could travel, and to me that is, you know, format.
I mean, for you, Dane, how was the transition from moving strictly YouTube to moving to a cable format?
Definitely crazy. It's one of those things where, you know, online you don't really have people standing over you telling you what to do, what you can't do. And then when you move to a format like TV, then you suddenly have censors, and you can't make fun of religion and throw in, you know, things that might offend people. So I think that was probably the weirdest transition. But other than that, I mean, it was kind of just, you know, it was like YouTube on a bigger scale, because we were just a small crew, ragtag crew, kind of just, you know, making this show, and like breakneck speed, just, you know, racing along. And I think that's really one of the biggest things. So.
And for you, though, for you, Henry, you're you're still sticking with independent. Do you still feel like you have an obligation to maintain a formula?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm surprised actually just hear you guys say that YouTube doesn't have formulas, because like there's vlogs, there's there's like the whiteboard animations, there's all sorts of different kinds of, there's sketch comedy, like it's like, I feel like when I look at YouTube channels, there's so much formula there as well. And so, clearly I have a style of show that I do, and if I break that, it's kind of weird. And if I generally, either people are really upset or I have to do it on other channels and create new projects for that. I don't think that the formula of your show is a difference between mainstream and YouTube videos. I think you have more freedom to choose what you're going to do on YouTube because you can just do whatever you want. But if you establish a formula and establish an audience that comes to expect something, you then have some obligation in some sense to deliver that to them, or else they're not going to keep on coming back for the same thing.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. Like, what do we really even mean by a format, right? Because like vlogging, yes, technically that's a format, but it's so tied to one personality, and I think that's where, from like the traditional side of things, when you're saying format, you mean like Big Brother, and it's like this is the concept. There's one like log line, and we're gonna slot in and out a bunch of different kind of characters. Whereas vlogging, or even your channel, is so personality based. I mean, even, you couldn't really necessarily step away from orange and have it be the same flavor. So I think that that's where the sort of transition is coming, is like the formats are tied to the personalities and they're one and the same thing.
You look like you had something to say, Henry. No, okay. Well, I mean, that's actually something I wanted to bring up. No, well, that's something I wanted to bring up though, which is the idea that, when you think about the average person, person who watches Annoying Orange or Big Brother or whatever, do you think are they paying like a lot of attention to who's actually making the show, or especially depending on if Big Brother I know isn't distributed digitally, I don't think. Well, I guess it is actually, because the 24/7 thing. So I mean, basically my question is, at this point, do we think that, how much attention do we think that the average consumer of content is paying to who's making the content?
0. I mean, I know that before I started making things, didn't care at all who made it. I didn't know anything. Like, that's the reason that Hollywood stars are the people on the screen, not the people who make the movie, who are directing the movies, or writing the movies. I think that I would pay attention to, is this on TV, or is it on the radio, or on the internet? But that's just the medium. It's not the network. It's not the creator. It's not the writer, or any of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think to add on that, also it's the age of DVRs and YouTube and just searching. You go out and get what you want to find. You hear about a show, you just TiVo or DVR and basically see it whenever you want. But I do think that sometimes a studio can have its own brand. You say, I'm going to go see a Disney movie. You have a very clear picture of what you're going to see. So I think there are times where a studio, does have its own brand, and you can have an overall umbrella over the content. And I think people then get a sense of what they're going to get.
There are also creators like, throwing out a name here, Joss Whedon. Like, he has a fan base around his work, but would we consider a Joss Whedon fan to be an average viewer? I guess is then the question. Or but also YouTubers have their brands built entirely. Some YouTubers have their brands built entirely around their personalities.
Yeah, I personally, I mean, will I watch the next Vince Gilligan show because of Breaking Bad? Absolutely. I feel like definitely that does come into play, at least for me. I think that
if someone on the microphone. No, right, you're good.
Oh, sorry. And I think it goes both ways, honestly. I mean, are there people out there that won't watch anything else I do because I made the most annoying creature ever? Yes. But yeah, I personally, I think it does kind of play a role.
I guess the question is, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It plays a role for people who want to be educated about that sort of thing and who become a fan. I think books are a much better example of things where people actually are much more connected with the author than and YouTube is bringing more of that back to visual media. But and before that, other than if there's certain people like the Coen brothers, like it's a Coen brothers movie or a Disney movie or something, but other kinds of things, like I don't care who directed the last Avengers movie or whatever. I don't know these things.
I do.
So do I.
We could fight later.
Well, I guess the question then becomes, so what role does personality play a bigger role in something independent than it does in something mainstream? Like the personality of the creator behind it, whether that's, or is it like you're saying with the studios? There's a blanket brand.
I feel like that's a big part of what people mean when they talk about like indie stuff, is that it has character. Like those two words kind of have started to overlap a little bit more, and so I think you can have like the indie studio of Fox, which is like Fox Searchlight, which is the pictures that they make that aren't the big like formula things, but they're things that have kind of this other, you know, more personal or more, you know, they have this authenticity to them.
Well, also, I mean, you know, creators are their person. You know, the personality is, again, like it's so tied to their channel. So I think it's people do care what channel is created by who.
Is there, I mean, at Big Frame, how are you guys specifically approaching like making that personality work within, you know, what's now a mainstream context?
Yeah, well, I mean, that situation is very new, so we haven't quite, DreamWorks effect hasn't quite taken hold yet, so we're still very much, you know, our creators are still very much independent, and so are we. But, you know, maybe a better example would be what we're trying to do with Polished, which is our beauty and fashion lifestyle brand, which is not a personality, it's not, you know, a creator's name, and we have multiple personalities coming in and out, and, you know, some people like Makeup by Mandy 24 have a show on our channel, and they have their own personalities, but they're not the face of the channel, and it's, you know, it's more of a brand, and I think you're starting to see more and more. So if you're looking at this topic of conversation, not necessarily just like YouTube versus a TV show or a movie, but actually within YouTube, you're starting to see more kind of the individual creators, and then channels like Polished or Awesomeness, where creators are coming and going, and those are great for us and for companies because we have a diversity of people we can work with. We're not necessarily tied to one channel. If they decide one day they don't want to do the show, that's fine. We'll just cast somebody else and you know, work with them in that way. So I think that's the next phase of what we're seeing working, you know, and I don't know if that really fits the indie versus mainstream, but I would say that it, you know, as we're talking about formats and as we're talking about how the landscape is shifting, that you're going to see more channels that are programmed like TV channels, where we have the Makeup by Mandy show on the Polished channel.
Now, when you say programmed like TV channels, do you mean like the concept of how you know basically what a CBS drama is going to look like?
You tune into Bravo to see these certain kinds of reality TV shows. You're going to tune into Polished to see, or Awesomeness to see a certain type of programming. Maybe you're not going there just for Mandy. Okay, I like Mandy or Makeup by Mandy, I'm going to go watch the meetup, but oh, I also love this other show that they do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different channels trying that out right now. We're actually doing that on Annoying Orange, where, you know, the Friday show has always been our staple. Like every Friday, fans know they can come and watch that episode. And so there's that, but then on top of that, we have, you know, content that we're now doing on Saturday and Monday and Wednesday, building it out. And it's, you know, kids know exactly when these shows are going to drop and what it's going to be, getting a regular kind of TV schedule.
Exciting for the creators because, you know, some of these creators out here have been doing this for now like 7 or 8 years. Like that is a long time to have all of that programming resting on your shoulders. So if the audience can start accepting this is brought to you by Annoying Orange, or brought to you by Dane, or brought to you by XYZ creator, and it kind of has their flavor and their stamp of approval on it, but it's not so tied to them. I think, you know, creators are going to be able to take their channels further and not burn out or get bored with their own content. And you know, as audiences start accepting that channels evolve and you can kind of see different kinds of programming, I think it's going to free up the creators a lot to do really creative, innovative things.
I feel like this is somewhat like a misconception or a misnomer, though, for the way that YouTube channels are called channels, and people always get confused when you're like teaching, you know, my mother about how YouTube works, and like, is this channel a thing that has shows on it that's running 24/7? No, it's actually, channels should be called show, right? Like a YouTube, like these should be YouTube shows, and so it's kind of now like, are we self-fulfilling this prophecy that because they're called channels, we're trying to make them like TV channels? Did YouTube, whoever in the beginning who designed YouTube and decided to call them channels, like force all of this in this direction because because just the word is channel rather than show. Because and that's a huge influence that some random engineer back in 2005 had, and also together with like the social, our collective understanding of how television works, essentially.
I think it's changed over time though, because it wasn't that long ago where, if you wanted to have different kind of content, you'd have to put it on, you'd have to create a whole new channel for it. Like it wasn't acceptable to put everything all on one channel, where I feel like it's kind of changed over recently, now that you can do that.
Yeah, and I think like the playlist function is sort of the solution for that. Like, YouTube, I think they did recognize that there's a lot of misnomers and it's complicated to explain for people who are not like part of the YouTube world, but I think YouTube did work on solving that with the playlist functionality, and we definitely see that working for us.
Yeah, it goes back to building out a call it channel, call it a brand. It's like, all right, the audience knows that's what you guys do, and it's like, all right, that's going to be lots of different things. Because you're speaking to an audience that's passionate about your storytelling, your look, your style, however you're trying to put it out there. So to me, I think, the idea of a channel, call it whatever you want, but the idea of like, all right, I'm going to tune into your channel, whatever you want me to call it, but to see everything you're doing, because I want to see everything, not just the one show. So that's, to me, why I do think it's valuable to have people build out these brands and have them have a place to go.
Marketing one YouTube channel is really hard, let alone an iPhone channel and a gaming channel and a vlogging channel and then your main channel. You start seeing talent have 4, 5, 6 channels sometimes, and it's nice that we're starting to see some functionality where we can put it all in one place.
Do you think that should be the preferred strategy, is consolidating your channels into one?
I think it depends on your content. I don't know if you might have more to say
No,
about that.
I was going to say the same thing. I think for sanity's sake, yes, because trying to manage all those channels is insane. I'm a culprit, so.
Yeah, we have a channel called Sawyer Hartman, and he does kind of challenges on his channel, and then he does these really high quality short films, and then he does this beautiful travel series called Through My Eyes. Those are 3 really distinct kinds of content, but he grew really fast once because he had them on. He was sort of doing them on different channels. We started working with him. We're like, let's just try it. Let's just put it all on one channel, and he started growing really fast. So, he has a unique channel in that, but I think that he's proof that it does work, and audiences are willing to accept that. One day they see like the drunk cotton ball challenge, and then the next day they see this like amazing short film.
But how much do you think that depends and like rests on the fact that it's just one person still, that you're like Vlogbrothers, John and Hank can do whatever they want as long as it's John and Hank involved somehow. But you take something that's more formulaic, maybe like Annoying Orange, like what I do, and it's really like we have a formula already, and we can't really bend to that. And putting different stuff on there really causes a lot of problem, because people are there because it's like Annoying Orange, because it's like explanations of physics. They don't want to see other random stuff that I'm doing.
For sure. No, I don't think I think it does still have to have like the stamp of approval.
Yeah, that's it. As long as it's in line with your brand, and I think that's the key thing.
But if you're talking about actually like traveling your brand at all, if you're, obviously YouTube's a huge part of a lot of our businesses, but if you're traveling anywhere else, I think you need to have that brand, because if you're, I'm passionate in the idea that, the app space, whether it's connected TV, whether it's apps on your phones, like if you have that passionate brand, it's like you can launch that and people know to go get your content there as well. So the question is really how broad do you want your brand to be versus specific. I hear what you're saying. I think it's very specific. If you just started throwing random stuff, then you would have an audience blow back. But and again, it's depends on what your brand is. Like Michelle Fan, we did a deal with the Fawn Network. It's going to be broad. She's a huge driver for that. And talk about burnout, all that. The idea that she can have a ton of creators that fit underneath her overall brand and produce content there where everybody loves what she does, and you want to see what she does, but you want to see what else kind of fits under that overall overarching brand. I feel like that's where we're going. That's where I feel like we're heading. That's kind of the convergence kind of conversation.
I kind of feel like if you're going, if you're worried about it, do it slowly. For like us, we went from doing the Annoying Orange show. We did our first other show on the channel called The Misfortune of Being Ned, and on that, it was a show that's thematically kind of like Orange, and there's a lot of cartoon violence, things like that. Even though the look is different, the feel is kind of the same, and people accepted it because it was kind of in line. And we had Orange kind of saying, it's okay to watch this. So, you know, and once they get to that point, then it's like, okay, now they'll accept putting even something more, a little bit different next time. Once you get to that point, then it's fair game.
It seems like the idea of endorsement is really key to building out these other, you know, bringing in other people and building out other channels. Like, you know, Michelle, in theory, if you're a fan of Michelle Phan, you're going to like anyone that she likes enough to put on her channel. If you like Annoying Orange, you're going to, you know, like anything else that Annoying Orange says is okay.
So does being like mainstream just mean making more stuff, more different stuff? Is that what we're saying here?
What are we saying?
Yeah, who knows what mainstream is? Like, you ask people outside downstairs what mainstream is, they're gonna have a very different answer than anybody else probably in this room, or, you know, you ask your parents, you ask whoever, like, everybody, what's mainstream?
No, that's actually something I was thinking about, is like, you know, at VidCon 2024, are we having this conversation still? Or has the great convergence fallen upon us? That's my question for you guys. You have to answer it now.
In 10 years, is there going to be complete convergence where you're watching Avatar and the skateboard stuff right next to each other?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I could tell you exactly. I feel like you're definitely going to be moving much closer to that. I mean, absolutely.
I mean, there doesn't have to be convergence for like YouTube to become mainstream as well. Like, I feel like it's a pretty ubiquitous thing in the world, and in some ways as the years go on, it's kind of funny to hear people still talking about like YouTube being indie, or like networks being indie somehow. Like, and maybe I'm too insular in living inside the YouTube world to think, oh, like, if you're not with a network, you're indie, and if you're with a network now, like if you're with Big Frame, or if you run Big Frame, suddenly you're mainstream. And you're wondering like, oh, you're not mainstream because you're not with whatever, Discovery or something. So it's this like worlds within worlds, and you know, I feel like this question of, you know, what are we trying to go for? Like so many young people now are watching, you know, most of what they watch on YouTube. If that's not mainstream, then I don't know what you mean by mainstream, or what we mean by mainstream.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I totally agree. So is it because it's advertiser sponsored? Is that mainstream? Well, no, that doesn't work. Is it long form? No, that doesn't work. You've got huge hit shows and Netflix and everywhere else. Like, yeah, I mean, how do you put it in a box? You know.
For us, it was, you know, one of the things that when we were going to the different networks to pitch the Annoying Orange TV show, every one of the networks wanted to, you know, cut us off and say, okay, you can't do the web show anymore. Which, you know, that was like, I put my foot down because that's how I made my living. And I thought it was so silly that anybody would try and cut that audience off. You know, that's where the audience was grown. That's where, you know, you want your audience to keep following you there and then follow you to the TV show and then back and forth. And it's such a weird question. But my answer is that, you know, they should live in harmony.
So how were you able to keep the web show going then? Like, where you just found the right network?
Yep, Cartoon Network. They kind of had the foresight to see, you know, hey, you built something big here. We don't want to cut that off. We want to use that to drive over traffic, and they understood the whole plan. So when we went to them, they said, yep, you do what you got to do online, and, you know, as long as you aren't throwing anything nasty in there, or, you know, that would damage the brand or our name, then it's fine. And so that's what we did, and, you know, I think it worked very well. And it's a case of someone kind of seeing, okay, this is where things are headed now.
I mean, that's how you don't get audience blowback.